Utah Department of Health, BY. And we'll go around the room here and introduce ourselves, and then if you just want, we'll do a quick roll call of who's on the phone.
I'm Holly Butch with the Referral Health Department.
Marcy Nelson, the Tobacco Prevention and Control Program at the Utah Department of Health.
Caitlin Fillion in the Cancer Program, BY's Program Manager.
And then on the phone?
You've got them on mute.
Oh, we have you on mute, so never mind. We won't. Thanks. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and get started with Holly and. Whoa. Sorry, we're having Holly and Marcy.
Yeah. Could we just lose the projection, but we're good online? Yeah. Okay, so I'm just going to take a quick second and introduce myself. My name is Holly Butch, and I'm the Health Promotion Deputy Director at the Referral Health Department in Logan. I'm here because I kind of have two roles that I play at the Health Department. For the last 19 years, I've worked on the Tobacco Prevention, Cessation, and Control program there. And then the last few years, I have been a lifestyle intervention coach for the BWISE program. And this is Marcy.
Yes, I'm Marcy Nelson. I work in the Tobacco Prevention and Control Program at the Utah Department of Health. I'm a health program specialist, and I've been working in the program for about 13 years now. We get started. It's not advancing.
No, try.
Okay, just figuring out how this works. So with the learner outcomes today, at the end of this presentation, you should be able to list the risks of tobacco and benefits of cessation. You should also be able to describe motivational interviewing and how to implement that in your tobacco cessation interventions. And then you should also be able to name 3 tobacco cessation resources. I wanted to start off today by talking about the tobacco use problem in Utah. Even though Utah has the lowest tobacco use rates in the nation, we still have a problem. More than 200,000 Utahns use tobacco, and this means that more than 1,300 die annually from their smoking. And also, because of that smoking, more than 19,000 children are exposed to secondhand smoke in their homes. And the statistic that you'll be concerned with is this one at the bottom. 10.6% of women who have received BWISE services since 2009 have reported smoking. So I know sometimes you can be a little hesitant to address patients that use tobacco. So this slide covers why you should address tobacco. And of course now we know tobacco, everyone knows tobacco is bad. It's still the leading preventable cause of death in the United States. But tobacco users, they know this. They know it's bad. They know secondhand smoke is bad. So when they come in, they're actually expecting for you to talk to them about their tobacco use. And screening for tobacco use and providing tobacco cessation counseling are positively associated with patient satisfaction. Because again, they know it's bad. They know they could be healthier by quitting smoking. So they're expecting you to talk to them about it. And research has shown that advice from a healthcare provider can double the chances of them successfully quitting. So you provide such a huge, or can have such a huge impact on whether a patient is successful or not. And a lot of times when they're coming in, their smoking could be contributing to other health problems, which is something else to take into consideration. And I'm sure you're all very familiar with what's listed on the slide, but I wanted to talk about how smoking can affect cardiovascular health. So the chemicals in tobacco smoke harm the blood vessels and damage the function of the heart. And again, I'm sure you're very familiar with this list. This can increase the patient's risk for atherosclerosis, aneurysms, coronary heart disease, heart attack, heart disease, and stroke. Unfortunately, we have the clinical practice guidelines for treating tobacco use and dependence. So we know exactly what interventions can be most effective for you in a clinical setting to help your patients be able to quit successfully. And Holly will be talking more in detail about the 5 A's, which come from the clinical practice guidelines. And this is from the public health service guidelines. And you can see the whole list of sponsoring agencies that were involved in reviewing the literature and having experts look at exactly what's the most effective interventions out there. Okay, so now I'll turn it over to Holly, and she'll be able to cover some of those key interventions for you.
Okay, awesome. Well, so kind of before we delve into the specifics here, I would just kind of say that what I've tried to do is take the framework from the clinical practice guidelines, the 5 A's, kind of interject or mix that with the stages of change. So it's, again, that's another language we're familiar with as we've addressed other health conditions in BYs. And then also incorporate motivational interviewing. So in doing that, you'll kind of see how they interlap and how they can be helpful to us as lifestyle intervention coaches. I would also mention that I think a huge role for us as coaches is that we become familiar with all of the resources that are available to help people quit. Because with the current schedule that we have with the number of interventions we have with these individuals, it's probably likely that they're going to need additional support besides just what we provide in BYs. So let's look at first then kind of the models behind how we help the users quit. This is the how part. So the first thing is we want to ask the patient if she wants to quit. And of course, this is built into our BY's interview. It's the risk factor tab of the interview section. So already we know how much they smoke and if they're interested in quitting. Next part, though, is that we need to advise her to quit. And again, each of these we'll have more detail on. We need to assess if she's willing to make a quit attempt, assist her in making that quit attempt, and then finally arrange for follow-up to prevent relapse. So let's look first at the ask component. So for every client, we need to be asking if they are a current smoker or current tobacco user even. It doesn't just need to be tobacco use. And Marcy will talk in a bit even about e-cigarettes. We probably need to be learning more about that. Also, if they're a former smoker or if they've never used at all. So again, this works great when it's part of electronic medical records, and for us it is. It's part of the Ecigs database. So then as a lifestyle intervention coach, our next step is that we need to advise them. And I think the best thing that you can take from this is that italicized sentence right there. And I think that we need to say to them, I need you to know that quitting smoking is the most important thing you can do to protect your health now and in the future. And this program will help you, and so will I. So this is where you can make it personal. And again, it kind of depends on how you have your clinic set up. But for our clinic at Bear River, we have it such that I can advise them about the need to quit after I've collected their blood pressure and I've done their blood work and I know their HDL and I know their LDL. And if I have that information in front of me, this makes it really personal for them, and that becomes super important. Because as Marcy mentioned, we all know that tobacco use will harm our health, but it's different when we know it's impacting my health. So if you can say quitting smoking is going to help reduce your elevated blood pressure, that's different. It puts them more into that stage of wanting to make a change. The next day is assess. So to do that, we ask them, are you willing to give quitting a try? And this becomes one of my favorite questions. I ask these on a scale from 1 to 10 questions a lot, whether it be to quit smoking, whether it be to start exercising, whether it be to make a nutritional goal. But I ask them, on a scale from 1 to 10, what is your desire to quit tobacco, because this gives me a good indication as to where they are in those stages to change. Then I'll ask, on a scale from 1 to 10, how confident are you in your ability to quit? And if it's less than a 3, you might want to ask, well, how come? How come you're not a 10? What's getting in the way of you being a 10 or being close to a 10? And of course, we want them to at least a 7. If we can get them at least to a 7, we know the chances of them moving along the continuum is going to be greatly increased. So then I'll ask that, well, what do we need to do to increase that number? What do we need to do to get you more to a place where you think you might be ready to make a quit attempt? And this kind of starts the conversation. And then this is my favorite question. Again, we use this in all different domains, whether it be quitting smoking or physical activity. But the next question we always ask is, what is one small change that you could make today that would move you closer to reaching your goal of quitting tobacco? So it's kind of the theory of baby steps. And I think about this a lot because I run. And as a runner, I would never say that tomorrow I'm going to go run a marathon if I hadn't first ran a mile. So I like to get them thinking of a marathon is kind of overwhelming if that was what you thought you had to do tomorrow. But if you build up slowly, you can do it. So if they start thinking, well, you know, maybe I won't smoke at my breaks at work, or maybe I'm going to make my car a smoke-free zone. Those are all just baby steps that get them making behavior change that will ultimately get them to the point where we want them to be, and that is tobacco-free. So I've kind of alluded to the stages of change, but let's kind of look then how this interacts with the 5A's and also with motivational interviewing. So the first stage, which we're asked to identify on Ecigs, is pre-contemplation. And with pre-contemplation, the client isn't thinking about making a change in their behavior in the next 6 months. In fact, they were probably not even thinking about quitting at all. So I often think, well, great, that's really cool. I understand she's in pre-contemplation, but what does that mean? How do I help someone who's in pre-contemplation? And what the literature suggests to us is that if someone is in pre-contemplation, what we really need to focus on is the advantages of quitting. Again, they're very familiar with the fact that it can cause cardiovascular disease, that it can cause lung cancer. So what we need to focus on is the advantages for them to quit, and maybe it's financial. Maybe you can focus on, you know, you're telling me that it's really hard right now to afford fruits and vegetables. If we could quit smoking, this would be so great because you'd have more money to do that. So focus on those, even those short-term advantages of quitting. Contemplation, this is where the individual is considering making a behavior change, but probably within the next 6 months. This is a tricky stage because sometimes we're reinforced by our good intentions. So key here with contemplation is we want to try to get someone to that point where they will finally commit to a date. As you can see, it says it's characterized about ambivalence with smoking, and we'll address ambivalence more when we talk about motivational interviewing. In contemplation, our goal is to really help them visualize success at quitting. So you can ask them things like, what might your life be like if you quit? What would be exciting? What would be different? What would be good for you? And have them talk through that. So in thinking through this, you can kind of guess then that pre-contemplation and contemplation are stages where motivational interviewing is going to be really important. And really that's what motivational interviewing was designed for, was to help get individuals to that point of thinking about behavior change. The third step is preparation. This is where an individual is actually ready to make a change. So this is awesome when a woman presents herself in our clinic and she's to this point. Because if she's ready to make a change, you've got to capitalize on that and help her make a plan. And we'll look through what those details of the plan should include. The fourth stage is action, and this is where they've made that change. They have been able to quit. So as a lifestyle intervention coach, a great thing that you can focus on with these individuals is to encourage them to celebrate their success, I like to ask them, when did you quit? They'll remember that day. It's important to them. So celebrate that with them, but then also encourage them to make other helpful behavior changes. Truthfully, most of them will want to because they're so proud of what they've been able to accomplish that they'll just be so excited they'll be ready to do something else. So this might be our chance now to get them to start that exercise program if they haven't done so already, or drink more water, or whatever it is our goal might be. And then finally, maintenance is to help make sure that they don't relapse. So this is nice when we have that information about them being a former smoker. And when I was reviewing for this presentation, I thought of a woman who has been to our clinic for several years, so we know her quite well. And every time she comes in, she likes to tell me that she's still quit because she's so proud of herself. And I think that's a good part of maintenance, is to make sure that we are still saying, you know, you still quit, and celebrate that so that they're not inclined to relapse. Okay, so the motivational interviewing combined with stages of change, as I said, really the purpose of motivational interviewing is to help build a client's commitment and for them to reach a decision to change. It's not necessarily the toolbox that you use to help them quit. Of course, you can ask questions in a way that motivational interviewing encourages, but really motivational interviewing, it's a style, it's a process, a counseling style to get them to the point of wanting to make a plan. So it's for those who are in pre-contemplation, and in fact, as it says here, prescribing specific methods or techniques is going to be ineffective for someone in pre-contemplation or contemplation. Really, the goal is to help them pursue their own motivation to increase likelihood of success. So as I was thinking through this, it's a little bit tricky because, again, in the BeWise database, the goals that we are to be setting with them are supposed to be specific and measurable. It's tricky when they're not to that stage of preparation to make their goals real specific and manageable, but it can happen. You're just going to need to focus your goals maybe on moving them to that next stage and then detail what those stages look like. Because it's not as easy as just saying by March 3rd, 2014, client will have quit and will have smoked 0 cigarettes per day. That isn't necessarily what our goal would look like if they're at this stage. Okay. So as Marcy and I were looking through this and preparing, with motivational interviewing, the first key thing is always that we're expressing empathy. And so she and I decided that truthfully the best thing we can do as lifestyle intervention coaches is care. Be genuinely sincere in their life. And so for me, what this means is there's a note section in the database where I detail probably more than the BeWise people ever wanted me to put there. But I like to write down anything I can about that woman so I remember her when I call back. I want to know more details about her specific smoking patterns. I like to know, where does she work, if she works. I like to know a little bit about her family, because all of those things are part of her life, which is what contributes to whether or not she quits. So key point here is just you need to care about these clients. Motivational interviewing also encourages you to ask open-ended questions. So some examples of questions might be, how important is it for you to quit smoking? What might happen if you quit? You can kind of see from some of those questions, you might open up a few of their fears. So be ready to deal with those. I would also mention at this point, my experience has been that for a lot of women that we see in BeWise, smoking is a stress coping mechanism for them. They might have some very difficult lives and might be dealing with depression. And so I think you always need to understand what are your ethical boundaries, like what can you help with and what do you need to refer a woman for. And if you open up some of those emotions, be prepared to make that referral. Use reflective listening. Again, some examples of questions you could ask is something like, so you think smoking helps you maintain your weight? And again, reassure her that that's a normal thought, that many women might think that. But then explain to them that, you know, most individuals that quit smoking, the average weight gain for them is about 3 to 5 pounds. So truthfully, gaining 3 to 5 pounds is less harmful on our health than continuing to smoke would be. So reassure them of that. Another question might be something like, you're worried that maybe smoking might cause you illness, or that it's contributing to your elevated blood pressure. Talk them through that one as well. And the last part of the expressing empathy is to normalize their feelings and concerns. And I think this next little bullet point is one probably a lot of people are concerned about with tobacco. It says many people worry about managing their life without cigarettes. If cigarettes has been what you go to when you are stressed and it helps you feel like you can manage your life, it might seem very, very frightening to think about life without the cigarette. Often they even develop a relationship with their cigarette to where it's been a companion for them. And now we're asking them to give that up. So you have to process that through with them. And also, again, I would make the note that you need to know where to refer them to so that they can get that additional support. And lastly here is be able to support the patient's right to choose or to reject change. Reality is not all of them are going to be at the stage where they want to say, yes, sign me up for the quit line, I'm ready to quit. So if that's the case, you need to be gentle and loving in a statement like, well, we're here to help when you're ready, so that they know that we could be that resource for them to call. Also with motivational interviewing, kind of the how is we need to work on developing discrepancy. So we need to be able to try to help them see the difference between where their behavior is now and what they have suggested to you is their goals or their values. So an example is given there. It says, it sounds like you're very devoted to your family. How do you think smoking affects your family? And as, again, as women, often it's our family that motivates a lot of our behavior. We don't want to think that tobacco use could be harming our family. So talking to them about making their homes smoke-free environments, their cars smoke-free home environments. Reality is if they can make more and more places smoke-free environments for them, then that's going to be tapering the number of cigarettes that they use, and that will bring them closer to that goal of quitting. Motivational interviewing also encourages us to support change talk. Again, this example here says it's great that you're going to quit during this busy time of your life. So often they might tell us, you know, I don't know, it's the holidays, there's so much going on, I have so much stress. I think you can also turn that into a positive, because something we know in the tobacco cessation world is that distractions and doing something else is hugely helpful in helping us quit. So maybe celebrate those opportunities and say, yes, it can be hard when you are busy, but that can also be something that can work in your favor. So anytime we have that opportunity to increase their self-efficacy, let them think for themselves that they can do this, that it's a manageable goal, the closer we're going to get them to that quit opportunity. And then lastly, build and deepen commitment to change. Excuse me, I'm getting a dry throat. The key point here is listed. It says our effective treatments will help ease the pain of quitting. This is where we can recognize that maybe they're concerned about, it might be uncomfortable to quit. So in this situation, we might want to be familiar with some of the pharmacotherapy that's available. Again, we're not physicians, so we don't need to know everything that there ever was written about those different medications, but we can kind of give them some basics. We can refer them to the quit line, and we should always refer them back to their healthcare provider to help them with that process. The more people we can get on their quitting team, the better. Also with motivational interviewing, they talk about rolling with resistance. It's not going to be surprising that with changing a behavior as challenging as quitting smoking, there may be a bit of resistance. Maybe not. Maybe they'll be super, super excited and ready, but many times we do have resistance. Again, this comes back to where we express empathy. Here's a way we could do that, some language we might use. Maybe we say to them, you are worried about how you will manage withdrawal symptoms. Let's talk about that. So again, it would be helpful if you had had a chance to maybe review what some of the withdrawal symptoms might be. For example, headaches are more common, or maybe sleep problems might be common. So if you're familiar with some of those then you can help give them some tips that will help them manage those withdrawal symptoms. And I think this is where it's also super helpful to be familiar with the tip sheets that BeWise has available to us. You can share some of those tip sheets. There is one entitled Smoking and Quitting that you could share with them, and then other ones I often will share with them is dealing with stress and depression. Rolling with resistance, it's helpful to ask permission to provide information. Instead of just making the client feel like, here you go, I'm going to fix you, here's what we need to fix you, ask them if it's okay if you share some information about strategies that have worked for others. That will help put down their barriers and make them more likely to want to hear information that you have. And then finally, the last step in motivational interviewing is that we support self-efficacy. This is the belief that we can be successful and that we can make a change. So with quitting tobacco, it's helpful if we know have they made quit attempts in the past. They can learn so much from past quit attempts. Literature suggests that it takes the average smoker 7 to 8 quit attempts to quit for good. So if we can learn from those past attempts, we can reassure them that that was normal, that maybe they went back, but it was probably because they failed to plan for something that they maybe hadn't thought about. So touch on that. You were fairly successful the last time you tried to quit. Tell me what worked for you. And then offer options for small steps towards change. And I think we've kind of already touched on this a bit as we talked about the stages of change. Have them think about making home or car smoke-free. I had a woman who her most challenging time for smoking was at work, and that was because her and her coworkers would take smoke breaks. So she had made a decision of what she was going to do on a smoke break besides go out and smoke. So she had identified a 1-mile walking route because she thought she could do that in her 15-minute break time. She brought headphones with her to work so that if she didn't have time to do the whole loop, that she would go to her car and listen to music. So there was different options, but the point was she had had a plan for each of those small steps. Okay, so that helps us with pre-contemplation, contemplation. That brings us then to the third stage of change, and the third A, which is assist. And this is an exciting time. It's so fun when you have someone come to clinic and actually they say, I am ready, I am done, I want to make tobacco history for me. And so what the clinical guidelines suggest is that you just remember the acronym STAR. And the S in STAR is that you set a date. Of course, we all know that if we don't set a date, it's only a wish that we might have. And so a date gives them commitment. It also gives you kind of a goal to work towards, and you can kind of try to plan your LSI interventions accordingly. But get them to set a date. And I like them to think of something that that date will have meaning. Why will they remember that? Because it's usually important in quitting that they remember that and they can go back and reward themselves for their progress. So get them to set a date. The T is that they should tell family, friends, and coworkers. Everything that you read, regarding behavior changes, the more people that we can add to our support network, the more likely we're going to be able to be successful. In fact, another class I teach, our Driving Under the Influence class, it says every person you can add to the support network may double your chances of being successful. So encourage them to tell their family, to tell their friends, tell their coworkers. A public statement of intent really kind of helps with the accountability component of quitting. And so people want their friends to be successful, and maybe they could share with their coworkers, their friends, specifics on what they want them to do to help them in this quit process. A means we anticipate challenges. I think of this more of what are going to be their triggers. What are the times where they're more likely to smoke? And again, I think back to a woman who had shared that her car was really challenging for her because living in a rural community, she would spend quite a bit of time commuting. And so when she was serious, ready to make a plan, something that she had decided she would do was she would put her cigarettes in her truck. And that way they weren't accessible to her in her car. And that was the strategy that she had to do until she felt like she had stronger willpower when it needed to be tempted. So identify what those triggers are, and then as you think about each trigger, have them think of a way they're going to manage that trigger. And then finally, R is to remove tobacco products from your environment. Again, it's just to kind of help with the temptation. If we've made a decision maybe to not eat potato chips, I know at my house, then it's really challenging if I have them in my cupboard because we kind of eat what is available. So think about that for the individuals who's trying to quit. Encourage them to make their environments tobacco-free. And as we mentioned, have them consider use of approved medications. And Marcy's going to talk about what some of those medications are. Okay, and then we're to the next day, which is arrange. And this is where we need to be familiar with all of the resources that are available to us. In the state of Utah, we are so lucky that we have several resources that are free, and it doesn't matter where you live. If you're in the rural community of Richfield or if you're in Salt Lake City, we can all use the 1-800-QUIT-NOW quit line. And this service provides, well, we'll let Karen just a minute what their hours of operation are and the number of counseling sessions that an individual can receive. But this is completely free and confidential and is a great resource. Actually, we'll also be looking at how a referral can be generated from our Ecigs database. Another resource we have is utahquitnet.com. So if the individual is kind of more private but still wants to support group, if you get on to utahquitnet.com any time of the day, there's usually about 300 people logged on, and it's a great community for them to ask questions. There's counselors on this service as well. They can ask counselors questions. So if they didn't live here in Utah, there would actually be a fee for them to use that QuitNet service. But again, that's a great thing that we have available completely free of charge to them. And why not use everything that's available to you? Call the quit line, get onto the QuitNet, use every resource that's available. Then also, I would encourage you to kind of do an inventory to see what is available in your own community. Is the American Cancer Society or is the American Lung Association offering a Freedom from Smoking class? If so, how much does that class cost? Are there potential waivers for individuals who maybe have the inability to pay? Or maybe at every local health department, you're going to have tobacco cessation staff. Touch base with them and see if they offer classes. If they don't, they might have some quit kits available. And find out what's available locally, because you may find some individuals, I just had an individual call me last Thursday who had actually completed all of their calls with the quit line. You can have a maximum of 5, and they had used all of those calls. They had been using QuitNet, but they still hadn't quit, and they just felt like they were so close. They needed just an additional option. So find out what are those options where you can connect them to. Timing is critical. If you've got someone that's said, yes, I'm ready to quit, I'm in that preparation stage, we want to make sure that we're connecting them to those services as quickly as we can, preferably during the first week. And this is where it gets a little tricky with the LSI scheduling, of where generally we wouldn't contact them again until 2 months after our first LSI. So in this situation, I would say even if you're not going to reimburse for it or not, connect them to someone that's going to help get them to that process of quitting, because if you wait 2 months, you might have missed your opportunity. With the arrange, it's also helpful if you can talk to them about problems they encountered to get them back on track. And if clients have been able to quit and have been able to stay abstinent, congratulate them on their success. Let's look at a little bit more detail then, like I said, about what some of those resources are. And then we're going to, here in just a minute, we'll turn the time over to Nicole, and she'll walk us through how you can look at how a referral is generated in the Ecigs database. So as you can see there, there's our 1-800-QUIT-NOW number again. Also be aware that these resources are available in Spanish. I know in our health district about half of our clientele is Spanish speaking, and so it's helpful to know that with the Quit Line, those services are available. You might not have local classes taught in Spanish, but the Quit Line is available to them. You can see there the hours of operation from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m. And this is awesome because it can accommodate most people's schedules. It would be pretty challenging to find a class that was going to be available at 6 a.m. So how lucky are we that the Quit Line is available at that time? As we mentioned, it's free and confidential, and the client can receive up to 5 sessions if they need those sessions, and they range in anywhere from between like 10 to 30 minutes in length. If they qualify, they may be able to receive nicotine replacement therapy. Again, there is that eligibility requirement, and part of that requirement is they can't just call the Quit Line and get free NRT. They have to be enrolled in receiving the counseling session. And Spanish isn't the only language that's available. There's over 140 other languages that there's translation available for them. So let's look at the referral process, and this will lead us to where we're going to make the switch to Nicole. So in the database, if someone says that they would be interested in being involved in the Quit Line, actually the database will generate a fax referral for you, and that needs to be then sent in. The great thing about the fax referral is that instead of you having to give them the 1-800-QUIT-NOW number, when you do a fax referral, actually the Quit Line will call the client. That will help then hopefully increase the chance that actually they will make that connection instead of them having to remember that number and then having to hope that they'll call. In this situation, the Quit Line will make the call. So this is super nice, and if you can also indicate on there when is the best time to reach the client, so that the Quit Line doesn't just make a few calls and then they're unsuccessful in reaching them too. So if you could indicate the best time to call or the best number to be reached at, that's usually important, obviously. At that point then, the client will enroll and they'll receive the materials. The Quit Line generally will send them a quit kit, and as mentioned there, they can receive that NRT or nicotine replacement therapy if they're eligible. The client receives quit coaching, and then actually the coach will provide some feedback to the BeWise program, which again is a huge, great, awesome thing of doing a fax referral, because then that information will be put back into Ecigs, and then when you follow up with them on your next LSI intervention, you'll be able to know where they were with the Quit Line, if they were successful in working with the Quit Line. So at this time, we're going to go ahead and switch over to Nicole and let her show you all how you can find that information.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So you should, and everyone can see my screen then, yes? Are you seeing the database screen?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. So you should all be familiar with this screen. This is the referral that is automatically generated when the client says they are interested in being referred to the quit line. This is the tab that you would click to indicate the best time to contact the client. This information is pre-populated. It's important that you enter whether or not the client has agreed. Once you enter yes or no, if you enter yes, then you must enter a contact person within your agency. Usually it's the BY's health coach that would be interested in getting the information back. You can print the referral, and it will look like this. And this is what you would print and fax to the quit line. So I'm hoping most of you are familiar with that process, and that this is just a kind of a review. But this is the information. We generated this referral directly from a quit line referral that collects the exact same information that they're used to getting. And as you can see, you fax it to this number, but then what happens is the information from the quit line will get faxed back to us here at the state. And this is the part that you may not be familiar with. There's this tab called Post Service. When you click on that tab, this is where the information gets entered that we receive back from the quit line. We usually will get a fax referral, or a fax report back on every stage that the client goes through. So when the quit line receives your fax, they send us back confirmation that it was received. And usually there's a note on there that will say in the next couple of days we'll be contacting your client to get them enrolled in the program. Once that happens and they're able to get a hold of the client, they fax back a form to us, and it lets us know what happened. At that point, the client can decline. Maybe they talked to the quit line and decided it's not really for them. Maybe they've decided to enroll. So those are the two things that might happen at this stage, and they will let us know. Another thing that can happen is if the client is not being able to be reached, I think the quit line takes about 10 days, a week to 10 days, continually trying to get a hold of that client. And if they can't get a hold of the client, then they fax us a form that says that the client has been disenrolled because they were not able to be reached. And then we'll just enter that date in, down here where it says that they were unable to be reached. Usually when, like we talked about earlier, when the client is contacted and they decide to enroll, that's the same time that they'll get their equipment ordered and the materials. And the quit line will send that information on a note to us, and we just usually enter it here. And if there's anything else, but usually it's just a quick, it's usually a brief note of what's going on, and so you can see that information here. And once the client has successfully completed all of the phone calls, then we receive a form back, and we'll enter that date here. And once this field is entered, or if they've been disenrolled, the referral will automatically be closed, and you can see that in the status on the line of the referrals. So this is the screen that you would go to when you schedule the client for their next intervention session and you want to support them or see how they're doing with the quit line. You can go into this screen and just kind of see where they're at. I think that's pretty much all there is here. Is there any questions on this part? I guess we'll save that for the end, but it's a pretty simple process, and this is all we have.
Thanks, Nicole. I just want to remind everybody that you can type in your questions, and we'll take time to answer those at the end.
So this is Marcy again. I am going to finish covering some of the resources that Holly mentioned. And Utah QuitNet, she talked about how this is such a great online resource, especially if people are hesitant to pick up the phone. They want to be a little more anonymous. They like going online instead of picking up the phone. They can go to QuitNet to get a quitting guide, medication guide, receive expert counseling through email, receive a personalized quit plan, and excuse me, this is 24-hour community support. The hours of the quit line are fantastic from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., but sometimes people need help maybe in the middle of the night. They want to connect to somebody, and there's a posting every 72 seconds on QuitNet. It's a very active community. Can also make online NRT purchase, and it is a lifetime membership for Utahns. As Holly mentioned, it's free for Utahns. They would be paying for this service if they lived in Colorado or something, but the state of Utah has contracted with QuitNet to provide this membership for Utahns to be free. And it's a lifetime membership. Once someone signs up with Utah QuitNet, they can keep going on, and even if they've quit smoking, they can get back on and help others too. We find a lot of that. Some other local resources that I want to talk about, especially since medications can be expensive for smoking cessation. So through the quit line, they can be eligible to receive free NRT, nicotine replacement therapy. There's also Zyban or Chantix that can help people quit. And if your women aren't able to pay for this, there are a couple of programs that we have available that they may be able to go to and get help. So we call these our tobacco cessation medications for the uninsured programs. And how it works, they have to be uninsured. But an uninsured smoker goes to either a federally qualified community health center, and I've listed the link so you can see where those are, or a health clinic of Utah, which also has the link. And they pay for the provider visit, but then they talk to the provider. They want help in quitting smoking, but they don't have the money to purchase the Chantix or their bupropion. They are eligible to receive up to 12 weeks of bupropion or up to 24 weeks of Chantix per year through these programs. And through the federally qualified community health centers, they need to be willing to be, this is where it might be a little tricky. I'm not sure how it would work, but they would need to be able to be a member of that community health center or become a patient, because if they go there and just get the medication, that could be bad for the community health centers. They get audited for that. But just to be aware of these programs, that we do contract with them to provide these medications for the uninsured. Also, they have a lot of national resources. Holly talked about the 1-800-QUIT-NOW. This is actually a national portal number. So if someone wants to quit in Maryland or Colorado or the state of Washington, they would call 1-800-QUIT-NOW. So this portal will determine what area code you're calling from. So for Utahns, if that's 801 or 435, they know, okay, this is Utah. We'll connect them to the Utah Tobacco Quit Line. If it's California area code, they'll connect them to the California Helpline. But it's really nice now that we all the states use this 1-800-QUIT-NOW. We market it, we promote it, and then it just so nicely on the back end connects people to the appropriate quit line. There's also smokefree.gov. It's a wonderful online resource. If you go on there, there's about 9 pictures of people, and they each have different circumstances. And one says, I slipped up. And if you have patients that are in that, you know, they can go there and get kind of reassuring advice of, if you slip up, it's not a failure. It's a, you know, quitting's a process. Keep going on. There's also, I'm depressed. So there's different scenarios on smokefree.gov that are very helpful. There's also becomeanx.org, and on this website they can create a profile. There's plans for them, and then also that online support network. With QuitNet, I forgot to mention this, there are forums that they can be a part of. So maybe they chew tobacco, they don't smoke, there's a forum for that, or if they're pregnant and smoking, there's a forum that they can connect with others who are going through the same situations that they are. and this is also available on becomeanx.org. So we've talked a lot about behavioral interventions and being able to provide counseling either in office or over the phone or connecting them to the Utah Tobacco Quit Line. And we've mentioned medications, and it's so important that both of these are addressed because tobacco is a two-part problem. You have to address the physiological aspect and also the behavioral aspect. And so just keep in mind that the treatment should address both of these in order for your patients to be more likely to be able to succeed at quitting smoking. And I believe we've mentioned all of the smoking cessation medications, but this slide will also let you know which are over-the-counter and which are available by prescription. So the first one, we have the gum, the lozenge, the patch, and those are all available. They're over-the-counter, and they're available through the Utah Tobacco Quit Line if your patients are eligible, as Holly mentioned. The nasal spray, the nicotine inhaler, are available through prescription only. And then I mentioned bupropion and varenicline, and those are prescription only as well. And these are the FDA, first-line FDA approved for smoking cessation. And after I show people that slide, I get a lot of questions about e-cigarettes, and people say, hey, I didn't see e-cigarettes on there. And I say, I'm so glad you asked that question because they are not supposed to be on there. They are not FDA approved. So, and maybe you can tell us this during the question or the Q&A part of this presentation, but I see a lot of people who use e-cigarettes because maybe they think they're going to help them quit smoking. Their friends said they're helpful in quitting smoking, but as of now, e-cigarettes are unregulated, untested, and they are unproven. E-cigarettes have not gone through the rigorous clinical testing that those medications, well, back up, that all of these medications have gone through to be approved by the FDA. They have to go through so many clinical trials, and e-cigarettes have not gone through those. So we don't know if they're safe to be used as cessation tools or if they're effective. There are a lot of studies and going on now, but at this point, this is what I tell people, especially the healthcare providers that we go out and train. You know, that I would always go back to what has been evidence-based, what's been proven to work, excuse me, and that we know is safe. And so that last bullet, until such evidence can be provided, they should not be considered safe, even though you may have patients come in and said, oh, my sister's mother, child, or relative has been using these and they quit. What we've found data-wise from the State Health Department are that adults are using them more as dual users. So they'll use e-cigarettes where they think they can, even like at work, even though they can't. That falls under the Utah Indoor Clean Air Act. E-cigarettes, they cannot be smoked in the buildings or in public places. But people may think they can, or they can think, you know, that it's safer to smoke them in the car with children. But this is, again, what we fall back onto. Until we have the evidence, we are not considering them to be safe until they can prove to us that they are safe. And then the other interesting data point that I'll just throw out is that a lot of youth are using these, and the e-cigarette rate has doubled in the past year, and in some areas of the state it has tripled among youth. So e-cigarettes are quickly becoming the trend of youth using nicotine, which is really scary. So that's my soapbox about e-cigarettes, and I'll be happy to answer any questions about those. So what about a relapse? Holly mentioned a little bit about this too, as a relapse. It should not be viewed as a failure either on your part or the part of the patient. Nicotine is so addictive, and it is hard to quit smoking. Working with the substance abuse treatment centers, a lot of people who go in and they're using all sorts, alcohol and other drugs, and they smoke, they say smoking is the hardest. I've heard that a lot. It is very hard. So, and it's a process. So don't feel, even this a couple times if they come in, they slip, they're still on the pathway to being able to quit, and just keep them there and provide that support, provide that encouragement. And I believe Holly mentioned this as well, but it takes an average of 7 quit attempts to successfully quit using tobacco. And you can be part of this process with them and be able to provide that support and encouragement to them. So our conclusion slide, Holly and I want you today to make it a commitment to address tobacco use with all of your patients, and at minimum, make a commitment to incorporate brief tobacco interventions as part of your routine patient care. And then I listed the 5 A's again: ask, advise, assess, assist, and arrange. We'll help you be able to do that for your patients.
Okay, let's see if we have any questions. So it looks like, sorry Alicia, I just saw your question that you couldn't see the slides. Let me unmute, and maybe we can do some of this over the phone. If I can, if it will let me.
Do you think that I didn't see any of the last one?
Alicia, are you there? Oh, let's see. I don't know if I have Alicia unmuted.
Yeah, you do.
Well, we will send out the slides again. Sorry about that. I apologize for that. Do we have any other questions, either on the phone or online? Okay. We'll go ahead and send out the slides and then also an evaluation, so if you can take that when you, at your earliest convenience, we would appreciate it. If you think of questions later, please feel free to, let me put up Holly and Marcy's contact information.
You gotta hit play. There you go.
So you can either contact Holly or Marcy or Kaylin or I, and we'd be happy to answer those questions or get answers for you. Thanks.